It looks like in the budget, Rachel Reeves is going to be targeting people with lots of property wealth with a mansion tax and potentially changing council tax bands for those more expensive properties so that people who live in really expensive £1 million houses in the southeast aren't paying 1991 rates of council tax, which means that some people who live in cheap houses in the north pay significantly more council tax as a percentage of the value of their home than rich posh southerners do, which are both reasonable changes. I think that one of the biggest sources of wealth disparity in this country is property, and that there are people who have big portfolios of very large and very expensive houses, broadly in London, broadly in the southeast, but across the country, who should pay more tax than that inordinate amount of wealth because you don't tax wealth enough. I want a broader wealth tax, but in lieu of that, taxing people with huge amounts of property wealth, which is where most wealth in this country is tied up, is at least something. It's a very reasonable part of a potential budgetary change. I would like to see council tax replaced with a land value tax, but you can tell that the right are mad about a potential mansion tax on incredibly well-to-do rich property owners, that they, here in the Mail, for example, are denigrating it as a benefit splurge by axing the two-child benefit cap, i.e. why should people who have massive expensive mansions not pay a little bit extra to ensure that hundreds of thousands of children aren't in poverty? Again, it's the politics of envy. How dare these children not be in poverty anymore at the expense of the richest in society? These people really disgust me, honestly. And whilst it is partially people like the Daily Mail and the Telegraph who are mad at this, there are other people who are mad at it too. Funnily enough, friend of the show, Kirstie Allsopp is mad about this. Ironically, when it's actually people envious of the kids who are the driver of this policy, she is the one who's saying that it's the government who is envious and that having a mansion tax is an envy tax. Almost every day I get a call from a journalist to discuss a possible mansion tax. How do we reach this point when we already have the highest and most progressive taxes in Europe, and still our government is planning on an envy tax, because basically that is what it is. I mean, first of all, big people with huge asset portfolios should pay more tax. If you look at our property tax system, it is massively regressive, not progressive, as in a proportion of what people actually own in asset values, especially when it comes to property. People who are in poorer households pay proportionally more of their income in property taxes and proportionally more of their actual house asset in terms of taxation too. So it is not progressive, our asset taxes on properties. It is regressive. Council tax is regressive because of the way the tax bands work. We don't have a land value tax, and we don't really see any attempt to change that before now. Whilst our income tax system is reasonably progressive because high earners pay a lot of money, and they probably should, in terms of asset taxes, that is not the case. But of course, if you are a know-nothing midwit like Kirstie Allsopp, you don't understand the difference between income taxes and all the other kinds of taxes that could be more progressive, and in terms of council tax, are incredibly regressive, you know? It's an envy tax, i.e. because she thinks that it's just people mad that people live in nice houses. But in reality, the people who are envious here are of the young kids getting given extra food via the welfare state, you know? And in terms of the overall taxes compared to the rest of Europe, now, we don't have the highest taxes in Europe. In fact, we have quite the opposite. We are below the EU average in terms of taxation as a percentage of GDP. We are 10 points lower in terms of taxation as a percentage of GDP than countries like France and Finland, who have significantly more than we do and have a much better functioning state than we do. But of course, Kirstie Allsopp is the daughter of the 6th Baron Hindelip, and therefore doesn't have to care about what the state does or doesn't provide, because she doesn't use any of it, because she can afford to go private, she can afford to send her kids to private school, she doesn't rely on the welfare state, and she is just mad about the idea that some of her gigantic fucking property wealth, or her inherited wealth from her dad, who was a literal baron of the realm, might be redistributed to poor families in the north while she lives it luxury in the southeast of England, you know? Regional inequality, as well as class inequality, is totally invisible to people of the daughter of a baron. Indeed, exactly. Like, incredible that she doesn't know what it's like to be poor. And again, like, we have a failing public realm in this country because we don't tax enough. Our taxes are too low. You can make the argument that income taxes aren't high enough on the low end of society because we pay less in taxes on the lower end of society than Denmark does, than Sweden does, than Norway does, who have a much better and better functioning public realm. But if you don't talk about income taxes, we talk about property taxes, we just have a regressive system, and she's lying by saying that it isn't regressive when it absolutely is, because she doesn't understand the difference between property taxes and income taxes. Lots of the countries in Europe pay a lot higher tax than us and enjoy a much fairer standard of living for everyone, so don't lie. I'm not, look it up. Again, she still thinks that we have a high overall level of taxation. It's around about 38% of GDP. France and 48%. Finland is at 50% in terms of taxation as a percentage of GDP. We are significantly lower than the social democracies of Northern Europe and even like broader liberal states like France. She's just totally wrong and making it up because she read it on the Telegraph that high earners pay a little bit more here than they do in other countries, right? Because, again, she's a moron, and she's also totally detached from the reality of real working people in this country because she is the daughter of a baron. She's a member of the literal aristocracy, that thing that we still have in this country, by the way. Aristocracy, and she is part of it. Tax in the UK is far, far lower than in Sweden, for example. Coincidence or not that Sweden is the 4th happiest nation whilst the UK languishes in 23rd place. Huh, have you ever been to Sweden? I mean, I've been to Denmark and it was certainly nicer than the UK is. And the idea that you have to have visited somewhere to have an opinion is insane shit. Insane shit from someone like Kirstie Allsopp. I'm glad that she's now kind of reverting to racism here. So someone responds by asking why she is saying this when Nordic countries, as I have pointed out, have higher quality of life, higher taxes and better public services and social security, and that she is short-sighted for calling a mansion tax envy. Perfectly reasonable response. And her response is very, very interesting, shall I say, when she says, perhaps look up the population of these countries, then visit them, then tell me if you think you could ever make any comparison to ourselves. Is she saying there's too many brown people? That's what she's saying, chat. Anytime you talk about the public services or the level of taxation in a Nordic country, the immediate response they always give is, well, they're more homogenous societies. They are more homogenous, so they have a better social cohesion than we do. And I'm like, well, we had pretty good social cohesion before 2010, when all the austerity happened. I don't know why you seem to wanting to blame the Browns for this, but that is basically what they always say, despite the fact that the number of ethnic minorities living in these countries has increased. She's essentially saying, we can't have nice things because there's too many brown people. Again, she's still trying to claim that we have higher taxes than France when we actually don't. Apparently she's answered the responses to this with her most recent post. But yeah, like, fuck the aristocracy, fuck Kirstie Allsopp. Did another video about why I think that she's a stupid bellend before. Go and watch that too. But otherwise, good move from Rachel Reeves. Can't believe I'm glazing Rachel Freeze when it comes to a potential budget policy, but taxing mansions and people who own huge amounts of property wealth, that gets the no justice thumbs up. And anything, I repeat, literally anything that makes Kirstie Allsopp mad is something that I will support. The aristocracy in this country have been sitting pretty for far too long, and it's about time that we actually gave them something to be mad about for once, you know? And if it means taxing their giant fucking mansions and me having to give the thumbs up to Rachel Reeves, then, so be it. Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for memberships. It's just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.